Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I am your host, John Espinosa. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. If you like what you hear, please click on that subscribe button and the share. Tag me if you do. I will be sure to post and repost your tag. As always, it helps others get to where they're going. It's tax season, and one of the things that everybody fears in tax season is getting audited. So I got a question that was sent in from one of our listeners around how do we audit ourselves? And I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? That is a timely question. One being tax dates coming up. The other, at least from like a fiscal year standpoint, are mid-year performance reviews. And I don't know about you, or your organization, or even if you do a mid-year review, I highly suggest. Remember, I normally work in quarters, so that 90-day increment. We're starting the third quarter. We normally have a mid-year around the April timeframe, and they are really an opportunity for us as leaders to provide feedback to people. I provide my leader, my supervisor, a self-assessment. They're totally optional. However, when I coach and I mentor people, I always encourage you to at least write down what you are doing, whether it's a activity, whether it's a project that you're leading, or maybe, and it doesn't necessarily have to be inside your organization. It can be outside your organization. It can be something in your personal life. However you want to capture those types of things, do it in your notes on your phone. You can start a Word document. I keep a Word document open and running, and I just add things as I'm accomplishing them. But it gives me an opportunity because I'll maybe go 2, 3, 4 weeks on a project, and I got some other things that are going on. Well, at the end of that project, you really lose sight of maybe some things that went on, or if you're waiting 6 months or even a year, if you're doing this at the end of the year, I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. That's why I always encourage people, write it down as soon as you do it or before you start it. As you're starting these things, do a CAR method. So give a little context, what's the action, and then try to quantify the result. That's all it has to be. 3 to 4 sentences, really, really short, but it allows us to talk about auditing ourselves. And guess what? It's a really good resume builder whenever you go and you're wanting to update your resume. I don't, again, have to go back and figure out what I did the last time I updated my resume or the last time that I applied for an opportunity. I pull up those performance reviews and they're in that format to where I can easily apply them to whatever job, whether it's a duty, whether it's a responsibility, whatever they're looking for. I can pick and choose what I want to put on my resume, and it's not such a big level of effort to get that resume updated. So let's dive into auditing ourselves. What does that look like? And why is it important for me in the mid-year to talk and audit myself, and then also encourage others to audit themselves? And then if you're not in a formal performance plan environment, why is it important just to audit yourself in quarterly or 6 months or at least a biannual basis? I would encourage at the least biannually. I really would recommend, though, to look at where you're at with your goals and things in a quarterly basis. So let's talk about this thing. Some of the things that I always like to encourage folks, besides capturing the projects or the activities that they're doing, but it gives us a time to reflect back. And if you think about auditing taxes, you submit your taxes and what happens? It goes through probably some kind of algorithm and it will flag certain things, whether they're numbers or too many deductions, not enough taken out. I don't work for the IRS. So I don't even pretend like I know what they audit. But when we're talking about how we audit ourselves, what are the things that you want to look for? Here's some things that I look for whenever I get to this point or I'm filling out that mid-year assessment. What's working? What are some things, or maybe you've started a new behavior and it's meeting with your team on a weekly basis. Is it working? If it's working, what about that particular activity is working? Is it because it's short in time? Is it just getting to communicate on a routine, consistent basis? So what is working in whatever you're doing? And this is probably the easiest piece to capture and to audit are the things that we're doing well. We tend to hear feedback from people on, hey, John, I appreciate that you're meeting with us weekly. Thank you for taking the time. Or I appreciate maybe a bi-weekly meeting, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be all around meetings. That's just an example. It could be from a non-organization, non-business life. Maybe you're getting up every morning and going to work out. Is that working for you? Are you seeing results? How long have you been doing it? Is it maybe 30 minutes of mindfulness? I talk about being mindful, taking some time just to decompress, be grateful. My gratitude walks, I started those. Are they working? Those are questions that you want to identify, that you want to begin to ask yourself through this audit. The second question that I would highly encourage you, and this may take a little bit of thought, and I write these things down. You all know I'm a read, write learner. That way I see them, and guess what? The next time that I audit, I can go back to that list and say, all right, that's good. That's still good. Maybe that needs to change. And that's what the second question is. What needs to change? Are there behaviors? Are there things that you are doing that need a little tweaking? Don't tweak them too much, but do they need to change? Maybe your 30 minutes of mindfulness is at the end of the day and you're fatigued, you're exhausted, everything throughout the day has piled up, and that 30 minutes of mindfulness really is just 30 minutes of you closing your eyes and resting from the noise. It's not really the mindfulness part. So do you need to move that up? Do you need to put that in the morning time frame or maybe at lunch time frame? Those are the things that you need to look at as far as changing. Are the weekly conversations too much for your employees? Are you going over maybe your time? Are you not staying on topic? So do you need to move them to a bi-weekly basis? I know a lot of organizations are going to silent work days where maybe it's a Tuesday or maybe it's a Thursday, whatever day. They will pick a day, and during that day, they will have no meetings. So you actually get to work. That's one, I think, negative of COVID is we just stack our meetings back to back to back. And throughout the day, it's hard to task switch. So we'll get started doing something and then boom, now we got another meeting. That may be something that needs to change. Do you need to have a day that's just dedicated to working? A lot of places, a lot of organizations are doing that. Maybe it's something along the lines of your personal health and you're not working out. Maybe you set a goal that you're working out for 15 minutes and guess what? You're barely getting out there for 10 minutes, or you promised yourself at least 30 to 45 minutes or 3 or 4 times a week, and that's not. So what needs to change? Is there something about maybe the day of the week that you're planning working out? Maybe you need to move it. So that's the second part. What needs to change? And then the third, again, this goes back to writing things down. What are those lessons learned? That way we don't make the same mistake 3, 4, 5 times. So what are the lessons learned? Well, I know enough about myself where I'm not a get up in the morning and go to the gym person. I would never schedule, and I found that out the hard way because I set up a goal that I was going to get up and go work out in the morning before work. Not going to happen. I know some people that is the perfect time for them to work out because they have a busy life after. I mentioned I have one, teenager at home. A lot of times, unless we're at sporting events, I do have a little bit of availability in the afternoon to go work out. So that's my workout time. But I learned that about myself. Another thing that I learned about myself, I am not good at turning this off. I'm not good at turning my brain off. So that mindfulness time, I really struggled with that. I've talked about that on previous podcasts. I got into cold plunging because it was a good way to turn my mind off because I'm just worried about breathing and I'm not freezing to death. So it was excellent at shutting off my mind. I know that about myself, where that 30 minutes of mindfulness is really, really tough for me. So it may be condensed down to 10 or 15, and I have to be away from everything. It has to be like a shock, like a cold shock to my nervous system, to where my brain just shuts off and can only focus on survival at that time. So what's working? All of this is going to be important into auditing what we're doing, how we're behaving, going back to how we coach others or how you would mentor others, just similar to what I mentioned. It doesn't need to be this whole drawn out process. I like the rule of 3. I give people 3 things to remember, and the memory retention's easier to do, and it's just a lot easier for people to walk away with the intent of your presentation. So the 3 things that I want you to do is identify what's working, identify what needs to change, and then the best practices. And you can coach somebody through that. Write down those 3 questions or send it to them in advance. A lot of times during my mid-year performance discussions, I will send it to them in advance, say, hey, listen, I want to really talk about these 3 questions, and make sure that you come at least with 1 or 2 things for each item. And then that will blossom into other conversations, but it's a really good starting point for you to work on not only auditing yourself, but coaching and mentoring others to audit themselves. I hope this helps somebody today. Go be great. We'll talk to everybody later. Bye-bye. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get others to where they're going.